Hello, everybody. Welcome to Two Mediums and a Large. Today is a very exciting episode as we have special guest, Julie Ryan, on here. You are author of two books, I see.
Actually,
Angel,
eight
eight
books.
books.
Eight.
Eight
Yeah,
books. Oh my goodness, I'm sorry about that.
that's all right.
Eight books, and you are a medical intuitive.
Right.
Am I right? Yeah, and psychic medium, pet psychic. You have so much interesting um like gifts attached to you that I've heard about and I've listened to your show, and that's just amazing. So we're so excited to have you here and to share the space with you.
Thank you. What a delight to be with you both today as well.
It's great to have you here too. One of the first things I want to talk about, because I think it kind of opens up to for people to know more about you, is I want to hear about this buffet of psychicness that I see. I would love to hear about that.
Yeah. Well, I'm a businesswoman. I'm one of those serial entrepreneurs. I've founded 9 companies in 5 industries, and I'm an inventor of surgical devices and former manufacturer of them sold all over the world, many of which have been on the market for more than 30 years. So
Wow.
I am truly a businesswoman who learned how to do woo-woo. Woo means source in Taoism. And I say I'm a buffet of psychicness because I didn't have dead people chasing me since childhood, or if I did, I didn't know it, let alone what I would have done with that information. I learned how to do all this stuff. And I
Yeah.
teach people from all over the world how to do it because we all come in with the ability. It's just a matter of developing and enhancing it. And so when I first started studying this, you guys, I thought, why is this so siloed? You got the mediums and the psychics and the pet psychics and the past life people and the healers and you connect with spirit, you can do it all. So I just came up with the term buffet of psychicness because it's fun and I think it's really illustrative of the fact that once you connect with spirit, you can do it all.
God, I really love that. I'm like you. I had this thing growing up, but wasn't sure what it was. But then I taught myself. I researched, I learned things and taught myself how to do it. So I
Yeah.
think it's so amazing that I've not been doing it as long as you have. But it's amazing to talk to somebody that started that way and to see how huge you've gotten and the number of people you've been able to help. Because I believe in the same thing. When I first got in here, I thought, thinking, man, everybody in the spiritual community is so segregated. Some of you, we do Reiki, we do mediumship, we do this, and oh my Lord, if you cross, then you're kind of this anomaly, right? And I love the phrase buffet of psychicness. Glad you have a trademark because if it didn't, I'd be using it. Okay. Because that's exactly what I do. And so
Yeah.
I love that. I love that with you. Lara, did you have any questions for Julie?
Yeah, so hearing your story is truly amazing. And I really wanted to ask you. So you said you learned how to develop your gifts. Now, what's interesting to me is like, did you feel you were led to go this way, or was it you were drawn to the spirit world, or how did that really come about for you?
I was born and raised Catholic, 12 years Catholic schools. And I think the Catholics do a really good job of teaching little children about angels and saints. And, you can talk to the Holy Spirit and you can talk to your saint, whoever, Saint Anthony, if you've lost something. So I had that platform from which to jump. A lot of people don't have any of that. And I, in my late 60s, can still recite the guardian angel prayer that I said every night going to bed, as a little kid. And so a little more than 30 years ago, one of my friends gave me a book called Anatomy of the Spirit, which is by Carolyn Mace, Dr. Carolyn Mace, and she called herself a medical intuitive. And I thought, well, what the heck is that? I'd never heard that term before. And I had been in the hospital supply industry for quite a few years at that point and had started my own companies and all of that and was inventing and manufacturing surgical devices. So I was helping people heal, but through their surgeons and their physicians and their other medical providers. And so it really piqued my curiosity. And we didn't have the internet yet. So I did the old fashioned thing, you guys, and I went to a bookstore. And
Oh, goodness.
and
Hey,
I
I've
found
actually done that.
I went to a bookstore, a Barnes and Noble actually, and I thought, well, they'd be perhaps more likely to have woo-woo kind of stuff than even my local library. And I found a book called Hands of Light by the late Dr. Barbara Brennan, who was a very famous nuclear physicist for NASA. She was a rocket
Oh,
scientist, and she parlayed very complex quantum physics principles into understandable English and talked about how to help use energy to heal. And I wanted to know more. And I called her school, which at the time was on Long Island in New York. And I said, "You guys got anybody teaching this stuff in my area?" Because we didn't have online training at that
Yeah.
point yet. We didn't have the
Yeah.
internet yet. And they said, "Yeah, as a matter of fact, we have a graduate that just opened a school." And I studied with her for several years. And she came up with kind of her own goulash. She took Barbara Brennan's stuff and Kabbalistic healing and other modalities that she'd come together and she put it in what I call her own goulash, which is what we all do. We all take things that we've learned in our own life experiences and put them into techniques and methodologies that we all use. So I studied with her for many years. And then I started doing this full time probably about 8 years ago after I sold my surgical device company and thought, all right, what am I going to do now? And this is what came about. And it's the most fun thing I've ever done in my whole life out of 9 companies that I've founded, you guys. It is
probably the
just
most meaningful too, is like you
so
really get
much fun. Yeah, the most enjoyable. I get to meet amazing people like you guys, and it's just really been a delight.
Yeah,
that's
I
amazing.
love this. I love this. I worked in corporate for 15 years.
Yeah.
I worked at an insurance brokerage, and this is the most rewarding thing. I mean, before that I had 84 jobs, so that didn't count. This is the most rewarding thing I've ever done in my life. To be
Yeah.
able for somebody to sit across the table from me or through Zoom and say, you see me, you see who I am. That is more rewarding than even them to come and say, you healed me, right? Because, I can't heal you. You got to do it yourself. But for
Right.
them to say, you see me when they've never been seen before, man, that really helps a lot.
Well, and I would imagine that you're helping them with their grieving too if they've lost a loved one. A lot of the time, people, I would imagine, come to you too and to me and to my
Yeah.
graduates. And it's your research shows that it is one of the most profound ways to help somebody heal their grief is to be able to communicate with their deceased loved ones either through a medium or on their own and get validation for the information that they're receiving and have somebody say, "No, you're not nuts. This is really
Yeah.
a message from your grandfather who died
Right.
3 weeks ago."
Lara is a great medium. I am a so-so medium. Most of mine are channeling and psychic readings
Oh, great.
and Reiki healing and cosmic healing. And so while I do get some of those morning, a lot of times it's just people come in and saying, I don't know what's going on with me, but
Mm,
something is going on. And so 9 times out of 10, it's because they're accessing their powers, their
yeah.
gifts, and don't understand it. So it's really fun to be able to get in there and help them do that, but also say sometimes pretty bluntly, the problem you're experiencing, well, it's you. So let's work on that. Right. And so that might not be as fun for them. I do have a question for you though, Julie, if you don't mind. You talked about being religious earlier in life and
Yeah.
having those things to step into. As you got deeper into this and doing readings and seeing more things and hearing more things, were there certain things about that religious background that maybe stopped you from going forward at first, and then you realized, no, there's no reason to be scared of this? Or did you have many religious blocks getting into it?
I didn't have any.
Good.
I still go to church every week and I
Awesome. Love
meditate
that.
every morning and I say the rosary every morning and I call myself a cafeteria Catholic because I take what I want and I leave what doesn't make sense to
That's
me.
how it should be, though.
Heck, that's how it
Absolutely.
is. And people,
Yeah.
everybody's doing that. They're just not admitting that they're doing that. My goodness, the church has been against birth control since it came out. Well, what? 99% of women in the Western world are on used birth control at some point in their lives. I mean, they're all cafeteria religious. So, what I found too is that I live in the deep South. I know, Robbie, you live in Oklahoma, which is conservative as well. And I thought I might get some pushback from the people in my sphere about this, especially in the South. I have not found that at all, not at all. And interestingly enough, Pope Francis in 2016 issued a papal bull, which is like a bulletin, like a
Hmm.
newsletter to all of his
Yes.
pastors around the world. And he asked them to welcome the psychics and healers because they were doing the work of the Holy Spirit. Now, that's
Yeah.
coming from the head shed at the Vatican, the
Yep.
oldest religion, Western religion, anyways, Christian religion on the planet. And interestingly enough, my book, Angelic Attendants, What Happens as We Transition from This Life into the Next, talks about how we have angels and the spirits of deceased loved ones and pets, and it has illustrations in it. And it's given out by many churches of all denominations, including my Catholic parish, to every family that comes in to plan a funeral, and synagogues and hospice agencies. And it's being integrated in through, I'm working with the Pentagon to get it into all the branches of the military. And
Wow.
also, we have already distributed it to the Blue Star Moms, which is the organization
Yeah.
of families with an active military member, and also the Gold Star families, which are the families who've lost a military member. So this is getting way more mainstream than I
Yes.
think most people realize. So to answer, that's a long answer to your short question, Robbie. I really haven't gotten much pushback, but I'm happy to share with you what I've said when I did, if you want. It's kind of
Yeah,
fun.
tell me
Okay.
Yeah,
everything.
I would love that.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
honestly, I think it's great that you're on here saying, yes, I still go to church and I
yeah,
do this
yeah.
because a lot of our listeners are in an area in their life where they think they have to choose one or the other.
No, 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 no.
And we've been trying to
Oh,
tell them, you don't have to do that. So to have somebody here and say, yeah, I do both,
yeah.
it's freaking fantastic. So, how
My
do you respond to those people?
my pastor at my Catholic parish has told me more than once that angelic attendance is on his bedside table. He said he believes it's that important of a book. And he's the one, you guys will love this. He's the one that, oh gosh, many years ago, from the pulpit during his sermon said, you know, people are so afraid because they don't know when they die if they're going to fly or they're going to fry. So that came from a priest. And I said,
That's
boy,
funny.
I said, I'm
That's
poaching
great.
that. Yeah. So every once in a while throughout the years, I've had somebody say, oh, you're talking to evil spirits or you're talking to the devil. I go, oh yeah, yeah, yeah. No, I'm not. And then I'll say, do you pray? And they say, of course I pray. And they're very indignant. And I'll say, okay, to whom are you praying? Jesus. Fine. Does Jesus ever answer your prayers? Yeah, all the time. I'll say, okay. So when you're talking to Jesus, are you sitting on the couch and Jesus is sitting next to you and you can hold his hand while you're talking to him? They'll say, no. I say, oh, you're talking with Jesus' spirit. And their eyes get really big and they say, I never looked at it that way. And I said, throughout all the holy texts, the Bible and every other one, you know what? Jesus is talking to his father. The angel's talking to Joseph. The angel appears to Mary. Moses is talking to a burning bush. I mean, it's all throughout all the holy texts, all of our literature and everything. And I say, it's all the same thing. When you're talking to God or Jesus or another religious figure, you're praying. When they answer you and you get guidance from God or Jesus or whomever, people think you're nuts,
Yeah.
Yeah.
right?
Well,
It's all the
people
same
are
thing.
uncomfortable with what they don't understand, right? And this is where we come in to kind of awaken, and
Mhm.
everybody is sort of awakening to the spirit world, right? Like everywhere you look, they may not admit it, but somebody's had an experience somewhere. And I think everything about what we do has to be in intention. Sure, there might be people out there that aren't working in the light, but 99% of mediums all want to be there to help people, right? That is why we were driven to do this. So I think that that's wonderful that you have that response so people can really understand that they too are talking to spirit when they are praying. You were
I
talking
have
to
a
spirit, you're calling on who you feel comfort by, right?
Yeah, I have another fun story that's real short about people are afraid to talk about this. May I share that?
Absolutely,
Yes.
yes.
After I released Angelic Attendance and we put up the Ask Julie Ryan website, I thought, oh, I'm just going to get nailed. I mean, it's going to affect my companies. I'm going to get nailed. It's going to be unpleasant. So I'm giving a business lecture at this conference, and it's all C-suite executives, primarily men. So I finished my talk. This man comes up to me and he's got his iPad open to askjulieryan.com. And he said, "Is this you?" And I'm thinking, yeah, that's my picture all over the homepage. And I said, "Well, yes, it is." And I'm thinking, oh, here we go. I'm gonna get nailed on this. And he said, "I'd really like to know more. Can we sit together at lunch?" And I smiled and I said, "Sure, I'd love that." And in my head, I'm thinking, great, I'm going to get pummeled for an hour with this guy. So I sat at this table of 8 people, 7 C-suite men, and me. All they wanted to talk about was woo woo. They didn't want to talk about the conference, their business, what I
I love
discussed, none of it. It was all about spirituality and how do you know? What have your experiences been? I mean, it was an in depth conversation that went on for an hour. I don't even know that I
wow.
ate much. So I
So
think
many
that's
people
a
want to talk about
great
this.
illustration. Yeah.
It
Yeah.
is, especially, I mean, like you were saying earlier, you thought about getting resistance in the South. I was really scared to quote unquote come out of doing, in doing this in
Me
Oklahoma
too.
because I thought, man, I'm going to get reamed. And I haven't been, there have been one or two, but it's been very welcoming. And quite honestly, where I've gotten the most resistance are other spiritual woo-woo people already in the
Really?
community. Yes.
Yeah,
And the
example.
main thing, the main thing I've come across is the set of if you don't do it this way, it's not the right way, so it's not any of our way, right? So it's a sort of, join the club or don't, but that's fine. And then I see, hey, they're trying to turn this into religion, so I go on to a different community. It's not been really bad, but that's where I've gotten the most resistance from is other spiritual people.
Well, they're
Um,
just coming from fear.
exactly.
And
They're coming from
control.
here.
Control is just fear. And
It
what
is.
I teach is let's figure out what's the easiest way for spirit to communicate to you and through you. Here's what I do. Here, you take that and you combine that with everything else that you've learned, and we're going to come up with your own soup, your own stew, your own goulash, and it's going to be perfect for you to have spirit work through you and with you to help others.
I love you, Julie. I love that you're here because that's exactly the way I work when I teach, right?
Mhm.
I wanted to go through, I kept asking my guides, how do I do this? Because there's a curriculum, but ugh, it's boring. All these other people do the same
Yeah,
thing. I don't want to teach
the
Akashic Prayer. I
copycat
don't want to teach
version of
this,
one
that, that.
another,
Yeah.
right?
So they finally said, just sit down and talk to somebody. And when I did, I got a channel curriculum, right? And it was so you want to learn this, yeah, and it was specifically tailored to what they wanted to learn, which it sounds like exactly what you do. Is we work with people to make sure that you're not learning anything you don't need to know, right? And the
Yeah.
stuff that really sparks you're going to learn more. So that's what we do.
Actually, I have
It's
a
so
question,
amazing you do
Julie.
that.
So you are known, one of the reasons you're known is being a medical intuitive.
Right.
And this is something that, some people may frown upon, right? Because, they say we're not doctors and things like that. So how were you drawn to doing this? Because it seems to be something that you do often on your show is bring in people and help them with medical intuitiveness. So how do you apply that into your life? And then how do you also how do you tap into that from your perspective?
Well, I was drawn into it as we were talking about earlier when I read Barbara Brennan's book and she was using energy to help facilitate healing. And I was already in the medical business, so I was already helping people heal just in my devices that I was inventing and manufacturing. So this was the next step, I think, into that. What I do, I believe, is part of the healing equation. Western medicine, Eastern medicine, chiropractic, homeopathic, whatever, energy medicine. Interestingly enough, we've all been using energy medicine for our lives and for decades, if not more than 100 years. If you think about it, what's the original energy medicine in the Western model? It's radiology. What do they do
Yeah.
in radiology? They're using radiation and they're using sound and they're using magnets to come up with a picture of something inside the body, but it's outside of the body. And they're using those energy sources to come up with the picture. That's number one. Number two, think about EKG and EEG. What are they doing? They're measuring brain waves outside of the body and heart rhythms outside of the body. So Western medicine's been doing this for a really long time, and all of us are familiar with it. Furthermore, there are more than 800 hospitals now in the US that have departments of energy healers that work with the medical providers. And they're doing Reiki and they're doing energy healing and stuff like that. And many of the really big academic medical centers have done and are in the process of doing research to, like MD Anderson, University of Texas down in Houston. They'll use an energy healer. They've published this actually to work on cancer cells, and they see a difference afterwards when the energy healer is working on them. So it's becoming way more, I think, mainstream. And really what's driving that are the patients. Because when people come to me, and probably to you guys too, I would imagine, they've been to see multiple doctors, they've gotten multiple diagnoses, perhaps multiple treatment plans, and they still have the same symptoms and they feel awful. And
Yeah.
so they're
Yeah.
thinking, I don't have anything to lose. So I'm gonna, go talk to Julie or Lara or Robbie and or one of our colleagues. And it's really been fun to watch it unfold, especially for me. Did that answer your question, Lara?
Yes, it did. I just think that's incredible that you look at it that way. But also, I wanted to ask you, how do you think energy actually affects people that actually do have illness? Like, do you think that a buildup of energy that's not properly flowing maybe creates illness within the body?
Oh, absolutely. There's always an emotional component in place before any kind of medical condition arises. So when I do a healing on somebody, we address that. So do all my graduates. And I'm not looking for what's the most dramatic or traumatic thing that's happened in a person's life. I'm looking for, where did that energy block begin? Energy block like Eastern medicine, acupressure, acupuncture, clear the block, get the chi to move, that whole concept. And it looks like a little kernel of unpopped popcorn to me. And it gets stuck in the energy field of the person. And then other emotional events, energy piles, piles, piles on top of it, eventually causing enough pressure causes a blowout in the energy field membrane. I'll come back to that in a minute. And it causes an energy leak, always precedes any kind of medical condition. So once we illuminate it, whether it's caused by something in this lifetime or a past lifetime, I'll get that information. Once we illuminate it, it eradicates it. The energy field membrane heals, body goes back to working on full power, helps the body regain and maintain health. May I explain the energy field membrane?
Please do. Yes.
I talk in analogies a lot because it gives us a human frame of reference for all this woo-woo stuff that we're talking about. And so if you picture somebody like a holy figure with a halo around their head or around their whole body, we think, oh, that's Jesus, or that's Buddha, they're holy. Well, we all have that. It's our energy field, it's our aura. It's our, it's the part of us that's everlasting. It's our spirit. So, brought up Catholic schools, I was taught the spirit's someplace in the chest area. Well, that's not what I experience. What I experience is that our spirit is the main part of us, and the body is inside the spirit. The spirit is the power source for the body, which is why when somebody dies and their spirit and their body separate, the body don't work anymore. It's lost its power source. So all of that, the energy that makes up the body and the spirit, is contained in what I call the energy field membrane. And it looks to me like really thin, stretchy saran wrap, the kind you'd see on a tray of chicken breasts from the grocery
Yeah.
store. That
Yeah.
stuff's thinner and stretchier than the saran wrap in the Glad wrap box, maybe in our kitchen drawers. So if you can picture this, if you go to the pet store and you buy a goldfish, they're going to put it in a plastic bag of water in order for you to get it home. So if you have a picture of that in your mind's eye, imagine the fish represents our body, the water represents our spirit, because again, the body's inside the spirit, and the plastic bag represents our energy field membrane. If there's a pinhole in that plastic bag and water's draining out a drop at a time, for a long time, that fish is going to be fine. However, when enough water drains out, that fish is going to be in trouble. And that's what happens to the human body over time. So that energy block can be caused by something simple like somebody called you a poopy face when you were 3 and it hurt your feelings. And we look
Yeah.
at that as adults and we think, well, that was no big deal. Well, it's a big deal to your 3-year-old little self when you got your
Yeah.
feelings hurt. Or it could be something dramatic. Doesn't matter what it was, doesn't matter when it happened. It caused an energy block that over time had enough emotional energy pressurize it to the point where there was a rupture in the energy filled membrane. I didn't learn that in any classes. That came in from spirit. And it's the most important part of a healing, in my opinion, because we can heal body parts all day long, but if you're leaking power, what's the point?
Yeah. I think that
I
goldfish
actually
in the
love that
bag is
analogy.
yeah, it's a beautiful analogy. I love it.
Yeah,
I love it. I would like to ask you now, if you don't mind, Julie, excuse me. You've mentioned a couple of times, and I would love for you to talk about your book, Angelic Attendants, because I believe you
sure.
said that you were going to give one of these to any listener that would like it. I believe this is
Yeah,
what you said.
yeah.
And then I don't know if this leads into that or not, but I'd also like to talk about the 12 phases of transition.
Sure, sure. Be delighted to. As I mentioned, this is what happens as we're transitioning, as we're dying. And there's lots of information out there about the afterlife and about near death experiences and about how to grieve, but not much information about what's happening when we're actually dying. And I find that's what people are most afraid of. Back to my
Yeah.
Father Fallon priest pastor who said, we're going to fly or we're going to fry. And so everybody's surrounded by angels. We're all surrounded by the spirits of deceased loved ones and pets. And I call it the 12 phases of transition because how the angels and the pet spirits and the other spirits are there are how they're positioned around the person who's dying is going to tell us what phase they're in and how quickly they're passing and how close to passing they are, which is really helpful to families who
Yeah.
are wanting to be with their loved ones at the end of their lives. And they're taking time off work or sometimes traveling vast distances to be there. And so if we see that somebody's in like phase 7, 8, 9, moving through those phases pretty quickly, then yeah, you probably want to start heading over there.
Yeah.
And so there's a chart on my website, askjulieryan.com. That's a free downloadable chart on the 12 phases tab. And if somebody has a loved one at the end of their lives, and a lot of medical providers, I've trained a lot of medical providers, and they've just heard me on my show or on other shows. I say download that chart and then save it on your phone. It's free. And then all you have to do is just ask, what phase is grandma in? You'll hear a number, refer to the chart, and you can ask unlimited times. It's that first thing that comes in your head, boom, fast as you
Yeah.
can snap your fingers, and you can do that. So what happens is, as I mentioned earlier, the spirit separates from the body, and it comes out through the top of the head. It looks like a cartoon caption bubble to me, like a
Yeah.
speech bubble, and it
Yeah.
hangs onto the top of the head. And then the first spirit to show up is the closest maternal spirit to the person who's dying. Now that
Okay.
surprised me.
That's for everyone?
Everybody. That
Oh,
surprised me. I thought God probably has a death and dying department in heaven, and he'd be like, "Oh, Stanley's dying. Let's send a couple angels to help him and his family." That's not how it works. It's the maternal spirit that raised the child. If it's the birth mother, she's there. If she's still alive, it's going to be her grandmother. If she's still alive, it's going to be the great maternal great grandmother. It's always on the maternal line. Next, it's
interesting.
the paternal spirit on the maternal line. So let's say if I was dying, my dad is deceased. So my dad's spirit was there. If he was still alive, it would be my maternal grandfather. And it always
Okay.
stays on the maternal line, which I thought was really interesting when I
That
Yeah, I
is
wonder
first
why
interesting.
that is.
saw this. Well, I haven't figured that out yet, Lara.
Yeah.
The only thing that I can relate to it is in the Jewish culture, a child is not considered Jewish unless born by a Jewish mother, which is why when Gentile women marry Jewish men and they want to raise their children Jewish, more often than not, they'll convert because the child is not considered Jewish,
I mean,
unless
it
the
could
mother
also
is.
be, just the universe is really feminine dominant anyway,
Well, there you
so
go. Look
it
at
really could be
you.
just a
Yeah.
continuation of
Mother
that.
Mary.
Yeah. The Mother
Yeah.
Mary. The other thing is if the person who's dying is adopted, it's going to be the mother that raised that child. The adopted mother will be the running the show. If they're raised by a grandmother or another female figure like an auntie or somebody, it's going to
I
be
just had
that
a thought
woman.
though.
Yeah,
What
what?
about those people that don't have good relationships with their mothers in the physical life, right? They don't have that good relationship. I can see that maybe being frightening to some people that, aren't comforted by that and really
Yeah.
comforting to other ones, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting to look at it that way.
I'm asked that question a lot. And
Yeah.
my answer is we all play a role. All spirits are pure love. And so that's a role your mom was playing. I have people say to me, oh God, my mom is the last person I would want there because she was just the bitch from hell. And I'd say, when you catch up with her, when you go to heaven and she's already there, take her an Oscar statue and say, Mom, you deserve an Academy Award because you were so awful when you were playing the role of my mother.
You played
And
a great villain.
you played a great villain. And if you look at interviews with some of the most accomplished actors and actresses, what are their the favorite roles? They're the villains
Yeah.
because there's so
Yeah,
many nuances that they can play.
for
So
sure.
there's that. And then what happens is the parents' spirits are there first, and then the angels come in. And these look like angels, like I was taught they look, in Catholic school. Big wings, white gown, rope belt, bare feet. Is that what angels really look like? Well, it's how they look to me because I was taught that's how they look. To somebody
Exactly.
growing up in an indigenous culture in the middle of the Amazon, perhaps it's like just a ball of purple fog or something is angel energy. Spirits are always going to show up in a way that's going to let us know who they are based on our own personal frame of reference. And I think that's really important to remember. To your point earlier, Robbie, where you were saying some people in the spiritual community get upset if you're not doing something a certain way, that, well, this is how angels are, period. No, they're not.
Yes.
Spirit's
Yeah,
always going to show up in a way that the person's going to recognize who they are. Doesn't
I would
matter.
agree.
It don't
I would
matter
agree.
if I know who the person is, if I'm talking to somebody's dead grandfather. What matters is that they know that that's Grandpa Joe. So
And
there's
I think
that.
that's I think that's a good distinction to put out there because I have readings a lot where people ask me, well, what do my spirit guides look like? Or what are their names? And I tell them, I see them this way, but you may not see them that way.
Exactly.
And they think, oh, well, that's a cop out, but it's not, right? It's
Yeah,
you always get the frame of reference that you need to. I'm so
that's
glad that
right.
you said that about
Yeah.
that. Said that.
Well, and angels, if I can digress for a minute, the first time I started asking guardian angels what their names were, they give me this name that was 15 consonants long,
Yeah.
no vowels. And I'd say, how am I supposed to pronounce that? Is that some dead language or is that like from a galaxy far, far away? What's the deal with this name? Can you just give me an easy American,
Oh,
simple
you
name?
Bob.
And
Your
so
name's
now
Bob
it's
now, right?
like Joe or
I
whatever.
hit the jackpot with spirit guide names.
Yeah,
Everybody is like really easy, like Charles, Cindy, like
exactly.
easy
Exactly.
to know.
And I
Yeah.
think the thing to remember is that really their name? Most likely not, but they're giving us a human frame of reference
Yeah,
through which to contact them. And when we do that, that connects us to their energy.
yeah,
And
that's
Yes.
true.
and then we can
Yes.
communicate. So, phases of transition, angels come, they form a circle. Let's say our dying person's in a bed just for conversation's sake. They form a circle. As the person's getting closer to death, that circle opens up into a horseshoe and then eventually a straight line across the foot of the bed. Now, some interesting nuances around phase five-ish or so. There are two additional angels that show up, and they're on either side of the spirit bubble. is what I call, that's hung on to the top of the head, like the cartoon speech bubble. And around phase six or so, animal spirits start showing up. And these are pets, spirits that you've had throughout your lifetime. They are sometimes farm animals spirits. If somebody grew up on a farm, and I'll be describing the horses and the chicks and the ducks and the cows, and they'll say, "Oh, that was Molly, her cow, my grandmother's cow. That was Charlie, her horse, whatever." And I had a client with whom I was working not too long ago, and her husband was dying, and there were all these African animal spirits that were in the room, like zebras and giraffes and lions and rhinos. And I
Can
said,
we all be greeted like
I
that?
said, well, we are. And I
Yeah.
said, well, did your husband live in Africa or something? What's up with that? And she said, no, but right out of school, he worked for the Peace Corps and he worked on an animal refuge in Africa.
Wow.
So
Wow.
all these spirits, these African spirits were there. So that's fun. Two other quick comments that I think are really amazing. One is between phase 9 and 10, those angels on either side of the spirit bubble, their wings start to move. And it's a very slow rhythmic movement, similar to think of a giant owl flying at night. They're silent. Their wingspan's huge. You can almost feel the drag underneath their wings. And the first time I saw this was when my own mother was dying in 2002, because that was the first time I'd ever been with anybody dying. And I just turned my radar on. I turn it on and off at will. I don't walk around scanning people. And I turned it on. I thought, I'm gonna see if I could pick up what's going on. So I felt like the Lady of Justice statue, because on one side my heart was breaking because my mom was dying. On the other side, I was like, whoa, this is amazing. All this stuff that I was seeing with the angels and
Yeah.
everything. So their wings start to move and they create a vortex above the dying person's head. We'll hear this from near death experiencers. I felt like I was going through a tunnel. I felt like I was in the middle of a vortex being pulled up or forwards. Exact same kind of concept. And when I saw that with my mom, I thought, this is how her spirit's going to separate from her body. I didn't know how yet. I didn't know what I was going to be witnessing, but I knew there was going to be a piece to the puzzle there. And in fact, that's what it did do. The spirit went up through the vortex, and it felt like this upward pull, similar to going in the car wash where it's sucking all the water off your car, at the
Yeah.
end.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then she was escorted to heaven by these angels. Now, when I was writing angelic attendants, I thought, I'm just going to check out, see if there's anything out there about. And I Googled angel wings vortex. Come to find out, you guys, there's this aeronautical engineering phenomenon called the wingtip vortex. Happens to everything that flies, every plane, every jet, every bird, every bug. And it's how the air goes over and under the wings, and it creates vortices under the wings that cause lift. If you Google wingtip vortex online, you will see thousands of aeronautical engineering drawings, articles, pictures. I never heard of it, but I'm not a pilot, but every pilot knows about it. The wingtip
Right.
vortex. That was number one. And I thought, oh my goodness, these angels' wings movement that I can feel, I can hear, I can see are causing this aeronautical engineering phenomenon that helps my mother's spirit and every other spirit lift and separate from the body. I thought that was amazing. Two other points. Number one, when I was giving a talk about this a couple of years ago, there was a physics professor in my audience. And I said, I always see the spirit go up and to the right. And I'm not sure why, but that's what I always see. And I've done this thousands and thousands and thousands of times. So he came up afterwards and he said, I know why the spirit goes to the right. And I said, oh, enlighten me, please. And he said, think about when you're screwing a lid on a jar. When you want it to go down, you're screwing it clockwise. When you want it to come off, you unscrew it counterclockwise. You come around to the left and you lift it up to the right. He said that spirit's coming out of the vortex and it's raising. So it's going counterclockwise, comes around to the left and goes up to the right. I thought, okay,
That's really interesting.
that works.
That's because it's like unscrewing your soul from your body. It's just that's
Exactly.
kind of what it
Yeah,
is. Yeah, that's
exactly.
amazing.
And then lastly, at my mother's Catholic funeral, there's a prayer said at the end of every Roman Catholic funeral called In Paradisum. And in Latin, it means into paradise. And it talks about how the angels and your loved ones will greet you and lead you into paradise. And I thought, at her funeral, I thought, oh my goodness, that's what I just saw happen with her. And so I wanted to find out, where did that prayer originate? And it began as a 5th century Gregorian chant. So I have
Wow.
to think, okay, well, maybe it took till the 5th century till someone was well educated enough that they could read and write. And certainly those were men living in synagogues and monasteries, and they were the scribes. So
Right.
perhaps since the beginning of time, everybody's been able to see these phases of transition. And we just as we become more proof based, we want to know, okay, how do we know that for sure? And
Right.
as always happens, science has caught up with woo woo, because there is now university based research that shows that 90% of people see the spirits of deceased loved ones and pets at the end of their life as they're dying.
Yeah.
90%.
I actually love
That's
hearing about
right.
these things
Yeah.
because I used to work in a hospital and like talking
Yeah.
to other nurses and things like that.
Yeah.
And their experience is like it's so similar across the board of what they witness for their patients. You know what
Yep.
I mean? And even though it's very Western medicine, everybody's got a story or an experience that they
Yeah.
can't quite describe, For
Right.
me, I was there when my dog passed recently. And
Oh,
when this happened, I'm not really sure. I wasn't tuned into it, but you can definitely tell the difference in the energy when they leave. Like
mhm.
it's like they are not them anymore, even though their body's physically there. It's such a shift. And you can feel it, and it never quite feels the same again. Do you understand
Yeah.
that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and there's research that shows that the body weighs less after the spirits departed.
I was about
Oh,
to
I've
say
heard
that.
about that.
I read a story a few years ago about like accidentally a researcher was doing something near death that was weighing the body, and at the moment of death, the body released weight, just very minuscule amount, but it was enough that
It
he could
was
tell,
different.
oh,
Yeah.
a soul. That's funny. I'm glad you brought that up because
Yeah.
it was a really cool study to read because it was kind of like it reaffirms, right? Because
Mhm.
I think most of my life I was an atheist and very much man of science. I need proof. So when I see stuff like that, it's like, yes, I'm not crazy after all, right? There's science that can prove it. When my mom died, she was in hospice, and I was there with my sisters, and it was so interesting because the moment she started passing, we were all busy doing this project. I looked up and I said, "It's starting." And they were like, "What?" And I said, "I felt it. I saw it. This is starting." And to this day, I don't know what it was I felt or saw, but looked up and she was taking her last breaths at that moment. So yeah, it's really interesting the way that happens. And I'm so glad that you have this book. How can people get this book if they want it?
Well, if they go to julieryangift.com, we'll send you a free digital and audiobook version. And we have them in Spanish as well. We're getting them translated into many more languages right now. I think this stuff should be taught in the schools because
Agree.
people are so afraid. And so I have a story for you, if I may, here in a
Go
minute
ahead.
about how this book came about. And I just believe this information is so helpful. If you want to get the paperback, by all means, please order it. And it's on
Paperback.
Amazon and all the regular places where you can get it. And in bookstores, you can have an individual bookstore order it if you want. But if you go on Amazon and you read, we have more than 600 references or reviews, I guess, rather. And people say, oh my gosh, this was so helpful when my whomever loved one was dying. Or I wish I would have had this when somebody who was close to me had passed. And it's given as a funeral gift, interestingly enough, and given to lots of people who have a loved one at the end of their lives, not just by churches and synagogues, but certainly by their other family members. I get these amazing emails from people saying, "Thank you, thank you. We thought grandma was hallucinating. We thought it was the morphine from the hospice people that she was talking to her mother who'd been dead for 40 years." And she wasn't. She was actually communicating with her mother. How this, the two interesting points. One, this happens to everybody, regardless of how they pass, whether it's instantly, like in the case of a homicide or suicide, or whether it's prolonged over days, weeks, months, even years. Somebody has Alzheimer's, sometimes, they'll last for years and years and years and not be able to communicate. And so I always ask three questions. Are you in pain? Are you ready to go? What do you need? And they'll tell us telepathically. And so that's what I teach the family members to do as well. How this book came about is kind of a fun story. I was with my mentor, and this was 10 years ago, not quite, almost. And when she's doing a healing on me, my loved one's spirits are on either side of the table. I'm laying on a massage table. And so they're helping with the healing. And one day, this spirit of this dead Pope walked in, and he had his Pope hat on and his shepherd's rod and his whole 9 yards. And I said, "Well, who are you?" And my mentor could see him too. And he said, "I'm Clement." And I said, "Oh, great. I'm so sorry. I never heard of a Pope Clement." And he laughed and he said, "Well, I was number 6." I said, "Okay, great. How may I help you?" And he said, "You need to teach the world what happens when somebody dies, because it's been so bastardized and people are so afraid. There's nothing to be afraid of. And you know it. You've seen it many, many times. And so you just need to, get on with it, go teach the world." And I said, "Well, thank you so much for the offer. But you see, I'm a businesswoman and people will think I'm nuts if I start talking about that. So I'm really not interested. But thank you for stopping by." And he laughed and he said, "Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, everything you've done in your business life has prepared you for this. And so you just need to get on with it." And I said again, "Well, thank you so much, but I'm really not interested." Kind of like, "Thanks for stopping by."
Yeah.
Yeah.
So a few minutes later, I'm getting in my car to go home, you guys. And just for fun, I looked up on my phone, Pope Clement VI. Come to find out, this guy was in office during the Black Plague. And he's best known for his prayers for the dying and his prayers for the dead.
Oh, wow.
And I thought, Ryan, you can't make that stuff up.
Right. No, you can't.
No way. So he prodded me for a couple of years. And then finally I said, "All right, all right, all right. All right, I'll do it." And that was when that story happened of being at that conference and talking to those executives and all of that. So I think I'm even probably, well, he probably knew what was happening, but I give away thousands and thousands of these books a year. So I think I'm getting the information out to the masses
I
on
think
what
so.
happens when
And
somebody's
I,
dying.
I am going to also put a link to there on my website. So if people go to my website, they can get that resource
You are
through
so
for me
fascinating. I can't
directly.
wait to read the book. And I swear I could talk to you forever, but we are getting close to the end of our show here.
I would
So
like to though. I think you have a something coming up in October that you wanted to
I
talk about real
do.
quick.
Yes.
Would you like
Yes.
to tell everybody about that?
Yes, thanks, Robbie. I have online training that's self-paced, and then I have a big in-person training coming up in October, and it's October 23rd through the 25th in Atlanta, Georgia. We rent out a hotel that's adjacent to the airport. People fly in from all over the world, all walks of life. The only thing you have to have in order for you to qualify to come is you got to speak English. Because I don't speak too many other languages very well.
Okay.
So
Okay.
you don't have to have any skills. Just come. And it's the weekend, and you learn how to do the whole buffet of psychicness. People are doing this stuff in the first hour. And
Awesome.
not only is the vibe, about ready to raise the roof on the hotel, it's also just so much fun. People are amazed, and they tell me afterwards, "You always talk about how much fun this is." I say, "I know." And they say, "Oh my God, you don't even, people can't even imagine how much fun it is until you come do it." So all of that's on my website, askjulieryan.com. So come join us in Atlanta. We usually will have people from multiple countries that'll come join us, and most of them from North America too.
You're doing
Sounds like a
incredible
lot
work.
of fun.
Thank you. It's so
Yes.
fun. It's so much fun.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. All
Yeah,
right.
Julie, it was amazing to meet you. Thank you so much for coming on. I really hope that our listeners understand how special you are
Oh,
and visit her website, get the free book, go to the thing in Atlanta. Julie is an amazing person, and yeah, well, thank you for being here. I really appreciate it.
my
Thank
honor.
you
Thank you
so
for
much.
having
Love
me.
having you.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye-bye.